Queen Cleopatra 2023 TV series review trailer poster release date. A wave of controversy followed the release of the Queen Cleopatra trailer. Many Egyptians took to the internet to speak out against the Netflix documentary series. Some even called for a ban. The trailer gave rise to growing concerns about misrepresentation and a general distortion of Egyptian history when viewed through our modern understanding of race. The trailer strategically used one of the most controversial statements, Cleopatra was black, that is pretty much out of context. Kudos to Netflix for creating virality and hype around Queen Cleopatra, but in all honesty, the documentary is lacking. The focus of the documentary is not just Cleopatra's career. It is entirely about her life as the last pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Unlike the trailer, which seemed to make a strong claim about her race, the docu-series is pretty speculative. Since the identities of Cleopatra's mother and grandmother are unknown, it's not too far-fetched to assume that she could have been of mixed race. Cleopatra's appearance varies from representation to representation, with Queen Cleopatra choosing to imagine her as a queen of African descent. Of course, the intention behind the representation has to do with making a socio-political statement. The findings and discourses around Cleopatra's origin are clearly expressed, and the documentary series directly addresses the concern. Stars: Jada Pinkett Smith, Adele James, Craig Russell. Adele James playing Cleopatra is not the same as Elizabeth Taylor playing the Queen in Cleopatra, 1963, considering that one is a documentary while the other is a work of fiction. But at the same time, the series is about a possibility, not an absolute truth. As an audience, it's important to remember that the description is debatable and should not be used to make a strong statement. Now that we've covered the controversial angle, it's time to discuss the series in detail. As scholars provide audiences with a simplified understanding of the last pharaoh, a fictionalized account of his life unfolds on screen. Shortly after the death of her father, Ptolemy XII, Cleopatra and her brother, Ptolemy XIII, began to rule Egypt jointly. Before taking over the kingdom, she married her brother to cement their bond as rulers. Cleopatra was not very interested in sharing the throne with Ptolemy XIII. She had no ideas of her own and often relied on her advisor, Pothinus, to make a decision. While Cleopatra believed that they should help Pompey fight Julius Caesar, Ptolemy XIII decided against it. This created a rift between the two that eventually ended in civil war. Pompey traveled to Egypt in search of refuge, and Julius Caesar followed him. To please Caesar and demonstrate his loyalty, Ptolemy XIII ordered Pompey's beheading. Pompey was Caesar's former son-in-law and intended to pardon him. He was furious when Pompey's head was presented to him and Cleopatra took advantage of the situation. Egyptologist Dr. Colleen Darnell spoke about how Julius Caesar became mesmerized by Cleopatra. She was a diplomat, a ruler and an equal with whom she could share her ideas and knowledge. She was graceful and determined, a fierce combination Caesar had never encountered. While Julius Caesar and Mark Antony's relationship with Cleopatra has been discussed for thousands of years, Queen Cleopatra addresses the villainization of the Egyptian queen. Queen Cleopatra is popularly remembered as a seductress rather than a political diplomat and effective ruler. At a time when her father of her twins stopped contacting her, Cleopatra focused on the needs of her kingdom. She made Egypt prosperous by making changes to taxes and exports. Queen Cleopatra reminds audiences of the many facets of the last pharaoh and how it was insecure members of the Roman Senate who conceived the idea that Cleopatra was a cunning and evil woman. Her presence threatened the Romans and she was doomed for the downfall of Caesar and Antony. The documentary series brings to light the nature of the politics that existed at the time and how it differed from the modern idea of morality. The fact that Cleopatra was responsible for the death of her brothers, Ptolemy XIV and Arsinoe IV, cannot be called good or bad. It was a decision driven by self-preservation. Watch Queen Cleopatra 2023 TV series trailer.